So last time I tried mixing epoxy and glow-in-the-dark powder that I got off Amazon, it ended up being pretty much a giant disaster.
I hate you.
Yeah, pretty much. It totally screwed our filming shoot.
100%.
This time, I'm going to give it another shot. We're going to make it work. So, in short, what happened is the last time I tried doing this, I had my friend Ashley from Chip Builds over, and we decided it'd be really cool to take these brass glow spinners that I'd come up with and make them glow by putting glow-in-the-dark powder and resin in there. Well, it turns out we ran into all kinds of problems. One of them was the fact that the powder that we were using, one, we didn't use enough of it, so it all fell to the bottom of the part while it was curing. And the other problem was the resin didn't even have a curing time listed. It turns out people said it took anything from 12 to 24 hours depending upon the weather, and that was a big pain. So this time, starting over again if you will, what I've done is I've just hollowed out a little bit of the top so that way there is room for the fresh glow mix to go in there. So let's get started. Obviously we will need some epoxy, and this time I'm going to try and be a little more accurate when I measure the stuff, because last time I think my horribly inaccurate measuring did me in. Literally I need like probably drops of resin, so I way overdid it as well last time. That's probably enough there. And I'm also going to mix in enough glow powder to make this more like a paste than a liquid. So let's do that. This is Neutral Aqua Glow Powder, 12 grams that I picked up off Amazon a while ago. You can buy pre-made glow-in-the-dark paints and stuff, which you probably could use as well, but I figured because I was trying to bond this to brass, doing it with epoxy probably wasn't a bad idea. Right now I'm just mixing the powder in the epoxy. Just trying to get it mixed in there, and I think we could use a little more powder. Obviously I don't want to overdo it, but I also don't want to underdo it. So, you know, it's always that fine line. This solution is now pretty dense with the glow powder in there, so what we can do is we can take one of the spinners and we can carefully just apply it to the top. We don't need very much, and depending upon how the final product looks, we may or may not sand the top smooth, so there is no point in applying 10 miles of mixture, especially considering the glow powder is not super cheap. Okay, so now we're going to let those guys sit and see what happens. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these custom little fidget spinner buttons, and we're actually going to try making them glow in the dark fill. I really hope this works. If it does, it'll be awesome. So we're just going to do the same thing as before. We're just going to take and wipe our glow mix over the top, and with any luck it will hopefully soak into the text, and then once it's cured we can sand it off. At least that's the theory. Okay, so these are looking pretty good. Now the next step is we just gotta let everything sit for a while and let the epoxy do its thing. Okay, so it's the next day. The epoxy is, I would say, about 95% cured. It's still a little bit tacky on the surface, but you know what? For the sake of time and for the sake of finishing these off, it's probably a good time to work on that now. So as you can see, the epoxy is higher than the spinner in most parts, and I personally don't want that. I want it to be smooth and flush. So what we're going to do is we're going to very carefully take a razor blade and slide it along the surface to remove the excess epoxy mixture. So let me show you how we do it. It goes without saying, don't cut towards yourself, always cut away. So what you'll notice that I'm doing is I am taking the razor blade and holding it for the first pass relatively flush to the spinner body, and this is being done on purpose because it leaves behind excess material which we actually want. We don't want to take it all down in one pass, we want to go slow. So for the next pass we can come in at a little bit steeper of an angle so the blade is more likely to cut flush, again trying to cut away from ourselves. If this thing slips, we don't need a razor blade to the finger. You'll notice how the surface is a lot nicer now. So now we can come along and hold it at even steeper of an angle and just repeat the scraping process. It's a little bit like removing excess paint around window trim. It's just a slow process, but that's what's got to be done. Also, try attacking it from different angles. That might help as well. Just make sure that the blade doesn't begin to dig into the base material if you can avoid it. Okay, so one other thing I'm going to try besides using the razor blade to remove material is to remove any excess on the surface, is to repeat the wet sanding using sandpaper like I've tried before, but last time I tried doing it, it was not anywhere near remotely hardened enough, and some of the grit on the sandpaper was starting to embed itself, which wasn't a good thing. So I'm hoping now that it's had more time to sit, when I go to wet sand it again, it should work. Okay, so we now have our base. We have our soapy water mixture, and this time I'm using 500 grit paper. I think last time I was using like 280 and that was just way too coarse. So I'm also going to make sure that I have an excess of soapy water on here. Perfect. That's looking really good. Now everything should be flat and not really have any excess material. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Only bummer is you can't totally read the text at this point, but who cares? It'll look awesome at night with the glowing logo, I think. Okay, so with that, I believe we can call that a final happy conclusion to glow-in-the-dark inlays for various items. Definitely learned a lot from the last previous time that I did it, which was a complete disaster, and I'm going to be releasing that video along with this one as kind of a learn from my mistakes, don't do what I did, because I did about everything wrong that you humanly could. So I hope you guys learned something from this and the other video. I'll see you guys here next time. We'll make it with Calvin when we may or may not be doing more glow-in-the-dark stuff, because let's face it, glow-in-the-dark is pretty stinking sweet.